Anthony Caggiano. No one wakes up in New York or New Jersey or anywhere and says, let's go to Margate. The CRA is on the verge of making a horrible decision that's going to affect the city for multiple generations. We're planning on building up to 1,000 units of housing. There's no pressing demand for apartments in our city. Can this city deal with an extra 1,000 cars a day at rush hour on 441 going in and going out? It's going to be a parking lot. Whose crazy idea is it to sell prime Margate property that we paid over $30 million for $10 million?
Arlene Schwartz, former mayor and city commissioner, 2003-4, when we held our original charrettes, and what we asked people was, where do you see the center of Margate? And of course, they said Margate Boulevard 441. We never asked them if they wanted 968 residential units with a possibility of 1,500 cars coming out onto a state road. No one ever asked the residents if they wanted to take a $30 million investment and turn it into a $10 million investment, which is a $20 million loss. We have to build an overpass over State Road 7 to get the people from the west across to the east, which will certainly make this the ugliest city in Broward County.
We're going to replicate Coral Gables. We're going to replicate South Miami.
3 minutes?
Excuse me, please. You want to leave? Don't disrupt the meeting like this. Why don't you just leave?
I'm not going to, unless you commit police to kick me
They
out.
will kick you out because you're acting way inappropriate. No, don't remove him. They want him to talk.
They're going to physically remove me?
If you keep this up, they want you to talk.
And that was violently offensive, by the way. Please don't ever do that to a resident like me with the police again. And oh my God, that's so creepy.
Stop.
Holy cow. Black Lives Matter.
You know, this is
Nice mouth.
what the heck.
Item number 3.
This is a resolution of the Margate Community Redevelopment Agency authorizing the sale of approximately 36.46 acres of real property to New Urban Communities, LLC, subject to the terms and conditions as set forth in the development agreement attached to as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference, finding that the sale of the real properties for fair value as provided in Section 163.380 Florida statutes, authorizing the proper MCRA officials to execute all necessary documents and providing for an effective date.
What's the wish of this board?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Ruzzano?
I'm sure by now you all know how I feel about this. I want to thank everybody for coming in, and we want to hear from you whether you're for it or against it. I'm all for developing, but I remember when I was running 4 years ago, and I went around speaking to everybody about this piece of property and talking about a downtown area. And then when the drawing came back, it's not what anybody I had spoke to about a downtown area. There's a lot of units going down there. I know there were studies done. The traffic, I think, is going to be horrible down there. We have almost 1,000 units that are going in up on the north end of 441. Pompano's got hundreds of units going over in Palm Air. So I think the traffic is going to be a nightmare. Just the parking in general at this downtown area is going to be a nightmare. I really think that there's a lot better we can do with this piece of property, and I know the developers are here, and I know that to them, the units are to make money, and I understand that, but it's almost as if they're using the city, to make money, and I understand that, but the seminars I went out in Las Vegas, it was all about what can the developer do for the city. And I sat with the developers 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, and I told them what I thought. And, there were no exceptions, and I knew there weren't going to be. But I really don't think that putting all these units down in our downtown area is what the people of Margate have been waiting for all these years. I can go into the contract a little bit, which I'm sure it's going to come up. We paid $30+ million for the property. I feel we're giving it away at a $10 million rate. There's just a whole bunch of things. I'm personally not for the project, nor anybody I ever spoke to was impressed, saying, wow, there's going to be another 1,000 units coming to Margate. So I know we have this year, in November, we have 2 new commissioners will be sitting up here. Maybe we should table this and wait till we hear what they would like to say. I know there's a few of them here tonight, and I'd like to hear from all of you to see how you feel about this, because nobody have I really talked to was impressed by these thousands of units coming down to Margate. It's not what the residents want. That's it.
Go ahead, Diane. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Do your presentation.
I'm not on, don't look at me.
Okay, all right. I think it might be helpful to go through the presentation first and just get the some of the background and some of the points in the development. The way we're going to present this, I'm going to review the process that was used to select the developer. Carter Christian's going to give an overview of the terms of the development agreement. Then I'll swing back and summarize some of the economic impacts, and then the developer, Tim Hernandez, and the planner, Joseph Cole, will give an overview of the pre-development plan, so there's a description of what exactly is proposed on the property. This is the site. As you know, the CRA began acquiring properties in the vicinity of Margate Boulevard and State Road 7 in 2004. A lot of this was in reaction to, there had been charrettes planned. There was a lot of discussion about creating a city center. There's all this vacant land, and the idea that there'd be a downtown Margate, or something that would really create a sense of place for Margate and for this, western part of Broward County, which has been developed over time in a much more suburban fashion. So the total assembled of property for this project was about 36 acres in size. And the goal, again, to create a defined town center for shopping, dining, entertainment, civic engagement with supporting residential uses. And the CRA went about seeking a development team to execute the plan. And there were a couple of developers that over the years were brought into the process, were interested, but those plans fell through. This latest process was a two-stage process: request for qualifications and request for proposals. The request for qualifications, the deadline was February 11th of last year, 2015, and that RFQ required the submission of basically general development qualifications. What kind of projects had they completed, what was their financial capacity, what was the experience of the team, and 4 responses were submitted. And this was heavily advertised. It was in the South Florida Business Journal, it was in the Sun Sentinel, it was a national service for seeking development and real estate brokers. So there was a lot of advertising done and outreach. But we did get 4 local responses. There was a selection committee that was myself, the city manager, the economic development director, and RMA's economic development director, who was a non-voting member. And we reviewed those 4 proposals and selected the 2 highest ranked development teams to proceed to the next step, which was the request for proposal process. And the 2 teams that were selected were AHS Development and New Urban Communities. Now, the RFP, which, again, the request for proposals, the deadline was May 12th of the same year, and that RFP required submission of a more detailed plan, still conceptual plan, but an idea of how the development team intended to use the property, detailed cost estimates, and then an operating pro forma and financing plan, which would show the capacity to build this development and how it would be financed over time. So both groups submitted comprehensive proposals. Both teams proposed mixed-use developments with a combination of residential, commercial, and hotel uses. We had 2 separate offering prices. New Urban Communities offered $10,041,750. AHS offered $10,900,000. So they were within about 10% of each other in terms of the offering price. The selection committee reviewed and ranked those responses, and with a maximum score of 300 points, New Urban Communities received a score of 255 points, and AHS Development Group received a score of 242 points. And you'll recall we had the model and video, and there was a lot of hoopla and a lot of outreach again, and getting comments from people on the proposals. On July 14th, 2015, the CRA board unanimously selected New Urban Communities as their development partner after seeing the two presentations and deciding that this one by New Urban was less intense in terms of building heights, had more flexibility in terms of what the developer was willing to do in terms of moving some of the uses around, and they just felt it was more fitting of what Margate was looking for. The board recommended some adjustments to the plan. They wanted the civic components moved to the east property, and they wanted a parking garage option to be included and in phase one. So New Urban came back really the next month, August 18th, 2015. They came back and presented two revised alternate plans that incorporated those suggestions, and the board accepted alternate plan A by a 4-to-1 vote and authorized staff to begin negotiating the development agreement with the development team. So Carter Christian's going to go over some of the points in the development agreement.
Thank you, Diane. For the record, Carter Christian, Project Manager, CRA. As Diane mentioned, the RFQ and RFP process really established many of the parameters for this project, the plan, the price, phasing. As we moved into the development agreement, that's where we had to hash out all the details. And you can imagine for a large, long-term venture such as this, there were a lot of details to work through. The development agreement serves a number of purposes. It is obviously a transactional document. It covers the sale of real estate, 3 closings over 4 years. It establishes a pre-development plan and a framework for development. This plan will undoubtedly be refined and changed over time, but it's the start and it's the baseline for the agreement. There are performance obligations set forth in the agreement, both on the part of the developer, New Urban Communities, and the CRA. The agreement talks about how and when each party will build its respective components. There are performance standards and architectural control established there. That's to ensure the quality of the project throughout the development, and also the CRA's approval rights over basically everything that's built there. Finally, we need to provide some flexibility over the long term. Again, it's a long-term project. We do want the developer to be successful. That will be a success for the CRA as well, and so there obviously needs to be some built-in flexibility to allow response to changing market conditions, which will inevitably occur over time. Again, there's a lot of details. Really, just time permitting, we'll hit highlights, and then we can come back. You have both the full agreement and a summary in your package. We can come back and answer any specific questions. This outlines the seller, the owner of the property, the Margate CRA. Purchaser is New Urban Communities, LLC. It's 36.46 acres and 11 platted parcels. The project, as defined in the agreement, would consist of up to 968 residential units, 100,000 square feet of commercial retail, an 80-room hotel. That's the private component. And then the CRA component would be an amphitheater, a community center, waterfront promenade and boat launch, shared parking garage, and town square. And all of those improvements really fall within phase one and were discussed in our earlier budget workshop. Deposit, there would be $50,000 cash put down upon signing the agreement, another $100,000 down after the expiration of the inspection period, at which point the deposit would be non-refundable. Purchase price, as has been mentioned, is $10,041,750, broken out in phases. The largest segment coming in phase one of a little over $4 million. There's also a contingent fee that is paid at the phased closings and then over the phases that total 1% of the total development costs excluding land. At this point, the estimated cost is somewhere in the 120 to 130 million range, which would put that fee to the CRA at 1.2 million. Closing costs are customary in terms of seller paying the dock stamps, developers paying title insurance, survey, escrow, and other closing costs. The agreement sets forth the obligations of the developer. They are going to design, permit, and bond all water, sewer, paving, and drainage within the new public rights-of-way in the project. That includes, we'll get to the plan in a bit, but the extension of Park Drive and Margate Boulevard east of State Road 7, as well as the extension of 9th Court and other interior streets in phases 2 and 3. That will all be done by the developer. They're also obviously responsible for constructing all residential, commercial, and hotel components in accordance with plans approved by the CRA and in accordance with the schedule that's set forth in this agreement. Each phase will be deemed complete, substantially complete, which allows them to continue on with the development upon 100% completion of the infrastructure and certificates of occupancy for 80% of residential and 60% of the commercial, which goes up to 75% in phase 3. This will allow some flexibility in moving forward while still completing the process. The idea is to always have activity, and you want to be able to move on to phase 2 and phase 3, even if there are some limited remaining development to be done in phase 1 or 2. The CRA obligations under the agreement are improvements that are provided for in the capital budget, amphitheater and lawn, community fitness center, canal, promenade, and boat launch, town square with water feature, a parking garage, and then subject to funding, we have been involved with the Broward MPO and DOT looking at various means for beautification and pedestrian improvements, particularly on State Road 7 and adjacent local roadways. If funding became available and there were joint projects potential, the CRA could get involved with that as well. The agreement sets forth a critical path, a schedule by which the developer has to follow to continue on with the project. Basically, the time frame for the developer obligations. These are contractual drop-dead dates, and there are fairly severe repercussions to the developer if these dates aren't met. So for that reason, they are somewhat conservative to allow for contingencies and unplanned events. But certainly the developer expects, and we expect that the actual schedule will certainly improve on those time frames. Those are basically worst-case scenario type dates. Just to walk quickly through it, the development agreement would be signed on day 1. There would be an inspection period of 120 days, which is fairly typical for a project this size and complex. During that time, the developer would investigate title, survey, environmental, soils reports, and determine whether they're moving forward with the project at that point. They would then put up the second deposit, and that would go forward. The site plan submittal would be within 120 days after that. The next 2 time frames are parallel, which are really controlled by the CRA and the city. That would be the CRA approval, review and approval of the site plan, and the DRC review and approval of the site plan. Once that's done, the developer has another 120 days to complete their construction plans, their final plans and documents, and apply for all building permits. They obtain those permits, there's a time frame on that, and then closing is within 30 days after obtaining those permits. Also, prior to closing on phase 1 and the subsequent phases, they must have financing commitments for 80% of the residential in the phase and 60% of the commercial. So going in at closing, they have to have a substantial portion committed to go forward. And then again, phase 1 construction begins as soon as possible within 30 days after the closing. And there are 48 months till substantial completion of phase 1. Again, it is expected to go much quicker than that, but there are often remaining an out parcel here or there that could be remaining over time. The second and third phases track fairly quickly after the closing on Phase 1. Within 6 months after the closing on Phase 1, they will be submitting construction plans and building permits, development permits for Phase 2. They'll close on Phase 2 within 2 years of the Phase 1 closing and begin Phase 2 construction immediately thereafter, 30 days thereafter. This would provide for overlap. You probably will have construction going on in both phases at the same time. What you don't want is to hit a lull or hit a gap in the activity. You want the activity to be continuous from phase to phase with no lapses. Given that schedule, the general feeling would be that the approvals will come, the site plan approvals will be about a year from now, and by the end of next year, they will be obtaining the development permits and closing on Phase 1 in early 18. Again, that's according to the worst case schedule, which we expect to be beat. Architectural control is another important component. CRA retains architectural approval rights over all improvements. All site plans, drawings, specifications, construction documents subject to CRA review. The plans must be substantially consistent with the approved pre-development plan as that plan is modified in the future. The flexibility I referenced earlier, we do provide for up to a 5% variance in the number of residential units, a decrease of 5% or an increase of 25% of commercial, wanting to encourage commercial development on the site, and other minor changes that don't adversely affect the quality of the project. Everything else will be subject to review and approval at your discretion. Over the next few months, we will be preparing a declaration of covenants that will be under an ongoing association, which will again allow for shared maintenance cost as well as the architectural control, and maintain other rights that the CRA has under the agreement. Again, there are a lot of details here. I think those are really the highlights. Be happy to come back after the presentation to answer any other questions you might have.
Okay, I just want to review some of the economic impacts of the proposed development. This is looking at one-time revenues and then revenues that will be projected over the years. But in terms of the one-time revenues that occur with the sale of the property and the development, the initial development of it, in terms of land purchase, we've discussed the $10,041,750. The contingent fee, which again, this is an estimate, depends on what the construction costs actually are, but it's 1% of that. So it's going to be potentially $1.2 million, or $1.1 million, I'm sorry. Residential sewer and water fees estimated at over $2 million. Commercial sewer and water fees estimated at around $200,000. Residential and fire and police impact fees, $761,000. These are based on the city's rates. Commercial fire and police impact fees, $181,000. Building permit fees, more than $3 million, for a total one-time revenues to the city of more than $17 million. In terms of the tax increment revenues that the city will realize over time, and this is hard to see, sorry, again, it depends on what the property is appraised at or assessed at by the county at the time that it comes up, when it comes on the tax rolls, how it's assessed, and what the millage rates are at that time. But when the full project, all three phases are completed, it's estimated that the tax increment from all three sources, that being the county, the city, and the hospital district, will be about $1.4 million. Now that will change over time because when the CRA goes out of existence in 2026, then you'll be looking at really just the city's portion of those tax revenues, which we estimate to be between $600,000 and $700,000 a year. And that's recurring revenues over the years. projected employment impacts. This is all based on data that's used by the state to estimate employment figures from different sources, and based on the breakdown of the uses that we anticipate with the project, the commercial uses, this is just commercial here, we expect 372 permanent jobs that'll be coming out of this. In addition, approximately 21 property management and maintenance jobs are expected to be generated by the residential component. And that will generate a payroll, both commercial and residential uses, an annual payroll of about $23 million. Now the development team is going to give you an overview of the pre-development plan.
My name is Tim Hernandez, principal of New Urban Communities. My partner Kevin is up in Michigan this week, so he couldn't be here. But I also brought with me today Joseph Cole, who is our master planner. And Joe, you haven't really spent that much time with him. You spent more time with me. But Joe is really a nationally recognized planner. Dover Cole & Associates is one of the most famous town planning firms in America. They've done lots of international work. He won't toot his own horn, but I'll toot his horn. And they really specialize in redevelopment of older, both urban and suburban areas, trying to figure out ways to kind of bring them current, make them desirable, walkable places. So I want to just mention a couple things. When we came up with this plan, this was thought through and discussed and debated internally a lot. And then we listened to you. We made changes based on suggestions that were made by all of you, all five of you actually. And it's when you do a plan like this, that's of this scale and this magnitude, you have to recognize that it's going to take some time for the market to understand what it is that you're doing. And but what we've tried to do here is a couple things. And we're trying to create something that there's been a way, let me say it this way, there's been a pattern that we've seen in suburban, not just suburban Broward County, but not just in South Florida, but just all over America, about ways that suburbs developed. And it was a departure from the way historically that they were developed, with true cores, walkable cores that people would come to. We went away from that, and we went to this model that was totally auto-dependent, and you basically had to drive everywhere you went. You really had segregated land uses, residential over here, commercial over here, industrial over there, and institutional and civic somewhere else, and almost never the twain shall meet. And that is such a change that's been happening over the last 10 to 20 years in thinking that we're now going back in some respects in time with all kinds of new twists, recognizing the way that the marketplace works today. I mean, we didn't have, back pre-World War II, of course, we didn't have online retail purchases and things like that. It's all something that's happened recently. So when we came up with this plan for the property, there's just a few major tenets that I wanted to just remind you of, and I shared this with you before, but I thought it was appropriate to remind you of what we were thinking about when we came up with this concept. And the first was that the traffic on US 441 and State Road 7 is by itself not enough to create viable commercial to create a viable commercial core. Significant residential density, the introduction of additional residential units, bringing new residents to Margate is necessary, it's crucial, it's critical to support the core. We also wanted to create a contextual design of streetscapes that is totally different from what you find in the suburbs, where basically you have, lanes of traffic separating, and then parking lots and then buildings. So the distances between buildings is not of a human or pedestrian scale. It is really designed, for people to drive there and park and then walk to their use, do whatever they're going to do, get back in their car, walk through their parking lot to get to their car, and then drive home, wherever home may be. There has to be some acknowledgement that we still are largely in the suburban area, an auto-dependent area, but things are changing. Every study, every research report you read shows that the next generation of people that are supplanting the baby boomers, the Generation Xer and the Generation Xers, the millennials, they like to drive less than their parents did, and they are attracted to places where they can drive less. So to design a community that is auto-dependent, in our opinion, is to design a dinosaur. And there's plenty of dinosaurs out here. All you have to do is drive up and down strip malls, and it's a Darwinian effect. It's survival of the fittest. A new strip mall comes, and what does it do? It cannibalizes the existing strip malls, and it empties them out until another one comes by, and then the same thing happens. The same cycle repeats itself. We don't want to be the victims, a knowing victim. What we want to be is a leader, and we believe that what we can do here is create a walkable, mixed-use environment that, of course, accommodates cars, but is different than what you find at the intersection of University and Atlantic, or at the intersection of Coral Springs Drive and Atlantic, or at the intersection of Broward Boulevard and Nob Hill Road. We want it to be different. We want to create something that's a model for the way development can be in not just in Broward County, but in South Florida. And, that's why we hired Joe. And that's why what we've come up with the plan that we have. So I'm going to let Joe maybe talk a little bit about, the plan in more detail, and I'll fill in the blanks if I think he's missed something. But, at the end of the day, we want to create some place that every place you walk, it's beautiful. It's interesting, and we have activity, okay? And if we do this right, and we have, I think, a great partnership that we've been developing over the past, months with the CRA staff, and we've got a vision, I think, and it's a shared vision with them and hopefully with you, as we spent many, hours, talking with all of you, collectively and independently, to create something that is going to be very, very special. And we understand, that, some people would like to see more commercial here. And we would too, because, yes, we'll make more money if we can get more commercial here. But it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't dictate. You cannot, like in, Field of Dreams, you cannot take the approach of build it and they will come. It doesn't work that way. We had a major real estate crash because people decided to build it hoping that people would come, and they didn't. And it's not going to happen. The financial community is very, very cautious, very, very conservative, based on the Big Short, the days of the Big Short, and all that stuff. It's not that far in our rearview mirror here. So we hit a new stock market high today. Great. But, we all know these things go up and they go down. And so there's a lot of caution out there in terms of, where people invest money. But this is the trend. This is what we're doing here, and we're very proud of the plan that we've come up with here. We're very excited about it, and I know it's going to work. So, Joe, I would like you to step up and, maybe talk a little bit more about the theory and the implementation here of the design.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. So, I'm not a developer. I'm a town planner.
Just state your name and address for the record.
Joseph Cole, Dover Cole and Partners. Our office is at 1571 Sunset Drive in Coral Gables, Florida. Like I was saying, I'm not a developer. I don't have a financial stake at this. I get excited about designing public spaces. My background is in architecture, but when I came out of architecture school, I was feeling like there's not really we're not really building great places, and that was in the 80s, and they were building office buildings off of highways at the time, and it just to me didn't seem like a place I wanted to live in. I didn't really want to design buildings in that, and so I ended up being transplanted into Miami. And I kind of looked around and I said, why are we building Miami and South Florida in such a way that doesn't really kind of convey that great sense of place? And so, one of the things we work in a lot of communities. One of the first questions we ask is, where is your postcard view in your town? Like where, if you were, in the old days when they would send out postcards, and you would say, now I guess it's a tweet. So we got to change it. Where's your tweetable view of your town? And so sometimes in our newer communities in Florida, we kind of scratch our head and like, well, what is it? And so maybe it's City Hall. You guys got the clock tower. You've got a few things started. But if you actually, and the other question we ask is, where do you go on vacation and what do you go see? And in most cases, you're not going into a suburban environment with big parking lots and big shopping centers and apartment buildings off to the side or something, and snapping pictures and taking those home with you to show your friends and family what a great vacation you had in this wonderful place. And so that made us start to think about, well, then what is it when we look at these postcard views or tweeted views, what is in the photograph that makes it look great? And so it was kind of an epiphany, and we discovered that there were other planners around the country focused on the same thing. And so we look at historic examples, because generally if you're going to visit a town, you go to the historic district or the older part of town. And we notice things about it. So, okay, the buildings are the buildings are sitting up against the sidewalk, and the buildings have doors and windows that face that sidewalk or that street. And what's exciting is that there's kind of the sense of enclosure that the buildings make that give you that sense of being in a certain place. And it doesn't really matter what city you're in. It's going to look different, but there's few fundamental things that appear in every place. And so we think of so as a designer or architect, I think I'm designing the space between the buildings, which I think seems to get forgotten. So for us, it's like, how wide is the street? How wide is the pavement? How wide are the sidewalks? Is there trees and landscaping in there? What do the buildings look like? What is the character of the buildings? And we think about, when then we think of other places, we say, well, what makes Charleston, South Carolina, interesting and different from Savannah, which is just a little ways away? Or how is that different from St. Augustine or Tampa? Ybor City has definitely its own thing going on in terms of character. So then, so what we were talking about architectural styles, and so we like to take the approach. With every new project, we want it to look like it's always been there. So it can't be some kind of crazy, trendy architectural design, at least throughout. Maybe you have a few special buildings that are a little different. But you kind of focus on what is the character and the vibe for Margate, and I think that's and the surroundings, and that's what we'd like to see into the buildings. So the fundamental rules that we stuck to in the plan was we wanted to make things focus to the streets. So the buildings are facing the street. The idea that even if it's a multi-story building and you might have a staircase that goes up, the ground floor units would all have doors and windows facing the street. And so what that does is then people come in and out of those doors and windows, and it creates this kind of activity on the street that, whether we really notice it or it's a little bit more subconscious, it just makes us think that, oh, this is kind of an interesting place. There's people walking around. If I don't have a reason to stop there, maybe I can stop there another time. And then that helps promote the commercial aspect as well. It's a little bit different. So in a place like this, we know we need the residential units to help support the commercial, because we don't necessarily, the commercial here is not going to necessarily depend on all the automobile traffic going by and stopping and having a convenient place to park. We're actually trying to capture some of the residents that are living here, whether it's in this project or on the edges, to actually get them to walk or bicycle or something else, hopefully not one of those things that explodes, and to skateboard, let's say. and actually like try to create commercial opportunities for merchants that are in Margate that aren't necessarily dependent on all the traffic. It's really the only way we can try to combat traffic, because we know if we add lanes to State Road 7, it's just going to create more traffic. We're not going to solve the problem by widening it. And so the only way we can start combating traffic is to get folks out of the cars. And this is really the only great way to do that. So the retail, any kind of commercial activities still need that visibility. So State Road 7 is the key road for the commercial. It's why the commercial isn't working further back up Margate. Back in the day when this was the only commercial in town, that was the street. I was trying to figure out why this is, but I think there were just simply no parking requirements in the 60s. I think they started, I know in Coral Gables there's a study done, the parking requirements arrived in 1964. And so that's why the properties are a little bit narrower, smaller, because they just simply didn't require the parking. I think people were driving less. You know, a household may have had one car, maybe two, when Margate was in its infancy. And so the narrower lots make it a little bit difficult to follow the kind of conventional model of the larger parking lot to accommodate everything. So that in itself is has been constraining it. So every single building we've tried to position so that it's facing some type of public space. And then we've tried to make the streets that come through, or the little squares, to vary, so it's not all the same. So not every street looks exactly the same. So the idea of the public square with the amphitheater down by the canal is kind of a unique feature, so it makes sense that can start to maybe be expanded and become the kind of center of the community. Maybe it can serve as one of those postcard views. It becomes a place that the community starts to identify as being theirs. And then, so that's why there's the connection between that with the community center down at that end. The community center also terminates the view of Margate, which again is a classic urban design move that we learned from the masters of days past, where you've got a street that comes down and then there's some physical object, a building, that kind of terminates that. In some communities it's a church, it's a community building, it's a city hall, it's a state capitol, it's a customs house like in Charleston. And so that was what kind of conveyed that positioning there, so that it also faces the amphitheater and the park. The space between the little segment of Margate that's extended from State Road 7 down to the courthouse is probably kind of the key place where you could have outdoor dining there. It's not going to have the traffic that's on State Road 7, and it's going to be between that visibility. It can act as a signboard for the community to know that something's going on down there. And then the parking structure's there, obviously, because we need some parking for the commercial activities and because of the public spaces and public events. And then further back, it really is focused on residential as we get away from State Road 7. The nice thing about this plan is the way we've positioned it. You could, in the future, if we need to, we could swap out some of these residential buildings in the later phases for commercial. because if it starts to become so successful, I know they'll make more money if they can make it commercial. So they're treading carefully and not trying to overbuild, because we've seen a lot of mixed-use projects where they come in and they build too much commercial. And then what happens is it just sits empty. And even though you're getting the residential units, you don't really want to see these empty storefronts. So that's kind of some of the flexibility that we worked into that. The hotel is towards the edge. We're assuming that would generate a little bit more parking. So it's closer to the edge there. You can see the larger parking field right there. But then also that kind of forms a bit of an anchor at that southern end. And then I'm looking forward to getting into the discussions of what we do with State Road 7 itself, because as everybody has commented, the cars are moving a little bit too fast. And so there are things we can play around with. Some of the designs, I know the MPO has been involved in it. Do we make some safety island in the middle to make the crossing a little bit easier? What I've been wondering is we can do some kind of interesting things. Some communities, like let's say this, I don't even know what the posted speed limit is right now, 35. So 35, if you were hit by a car at 35, you've got maybe a 50-50 chance of surviving that. It might be a little bit higher. So we need to get the cars slower. 25 to 35 miles per hour is the most efficient speed at which we can move cars. Because you know how if you're driving, if you're trying to keep 2 seconds behind the car in front of you, if you're going faster, that distance becomes greater. And so if you're slowing the cars down, you're actually getting the cars in more efficiently. So if we want to make this a safe town center, we need to be thinking further out beyond our boundaries here to try to get the motorist in the psyche of slowing down. And so I think we could do things like if it's 35, we could post the speed limit at 34 or 34 and a half, so that the sign suddenly, usually if they put a fraction in there, it's not like the police officer's going to stop you if you're a half a mile an hour too fast. But it's kind of a visual image that you're not used to. The news people love it. It's a way to get some free publicity for the town center, because then they'll do a little news story. Oh, Margate's coming in and changing things up and changing the speed limit. And so that's one way to kind of get community involvement and understanding. There's all sorts of things we could do with the roadway itself, as long as the state allows us to do it. So, I mean, I'm looking at that as the kind of next challenge and exciting part. So I don't know. Is there anything else?
So I think that kind of concludes our portion. I think that, what I want you to take away from this is that great places, they don't happen by accident, okay? They take a lot of planning, a lot of work. We're going to have a long-term relationship here, and we've tried to be, very respectful of everything that everyone sitting up there has said, and we are. I do want to mention we've been in the process. We haven't been doing nothing other than just negotiating the development agreement. We've interviewed 5 of the top retail brokers in South Florida, and that will be representing us on this project. And they're all anxious, and they all feel like they can bring some good uses that you will be proud to have in your community. And we take that very seriously. I mean, we're going to set the tone with the first few users that we get here, okay? And we want it to be a positive tone, bringing uses that you want, that you've told us that you want, but that also other users will want to be next to. So it's very careful. You have to make sure you're not stepping on people's toes. You have to make sure that you're bringing in complementary uses. And if we do this right, I think we're going to exceed, your expectations, which should be high for this, because it's very unusual to be able to find a piece of property, with this much acreage. But on the other end, and usually, if you do, there's a reason for that. okay? And, whether it's, demographics, whether it's economics, whether it's timing, there's always a reason why that property has been sitting vacant or underutilized. So, but I think with the right amount of effort, the right amount of planning, and obviously the right amount of money invested into this project, we can create something that we're going to be very proud of, as we are of all our developments. And I don't have to. We showed you before, some of the developments that we've done throughout South Florida, and we provided you letters from many of the other communities, from other mayors in Broward County and Palm Beach County that have endorsed us. The developments that we've done and the way we've done them. So, we would be honored to be your partner in this development, and thank you for considering us.
Thank you. Anyone up here want to questions? Comments? Mr. Ruzzano.
I just have a couple of questions about the contract when we were talking about it. Well, first for the property value, what's the property value of the property that they have in the contract, the 35 acres or so? Does we ever get an assessment on it or an evaluation on it? Appraisal?
Yes. We had it appraised before the RFP was issued, and it appraised for around $30 million. It's assessed at about 17.6. The county has the assessed value.
Okay, so it's appraised at around $30 million. Okay, my next question is there's going to be 3 closings over 4 years. If this contract does go through, which hopefully it don't, the first closing, what happens with the Ace Plaza? When does that come into play? Third closing?
The Ace Plaza is in phase 2.
Phase 2, so the money that would be receiving from the Ace Plaza, that would still be coming into the CRA? Or would they be receiving it?
When they bought the property?
When they go to the closing?
First phase will close when they have building permits and they're ready to start building. We'll close on phase 1. After they've gotten to a certain point with phase 1, they can close on phase 2, which does include the Ace Plaza property. The Ace Plaza, Ace Hardware Plaza property.
Okay.
So that all this money is coming to the CRA because the CRA,
I understand.
until we sell it, we own it.
Okay. There's going to be a bond put up. Is that for the whole project or for each phase?
The bond is by phase, and it's for the public infrastructure that they're doing.
So it's not for the total project?
No, they're not bonding the residential or the commercial.
So what liability is this? I mean, so in other words, if they don't complete phase 1 and walk out, then what happens?
There are a number of measures that the CRA has to take. First of all, they're basically eliminated from the project. They can't go forward. There are...
what happens with the debt? Say they owe $5 million to a vendor. Who's responsible for that?
Well, that would go through the courts. I mean, that would be separate and apart from... We don't own that property.
Okay, so why would it be unrealistic to ask them to put a bond up for the project?
I think so. I mean, I think that would not be typical. We certainly discussed that and negotiated, but it
Well, if you discussed it, it sounds like it should have been.
It's different than, because we won't own the property anymore. It's different than if we owned the property and they were building a project for us, we would require a bond, but that's not the case. That we will have sold them the property. It'll be their property. Their lender will require, and they are going to bond all the public infrastructures because those are going to be transferred over to the city ownership. So those have to be bonded, but it's not typical to require a bond, a public agency on property that we no longer own. It's just wouldn't,
Okay.
it would affect the financing.
David Tolson's board attorney. I did negotiate this agreement, but I believe there is a right to repurchase contained as well. So when they close on each portion of the property, there will be a covenant recorded in the public records that will allow the CRA to purchase any property that has been already conveyed to them back. So the CRA is protected in that way.
Okay. Now, going back to the 4 closings, or 3 closings, what's to say if they do the first project and walk away? I mean, what happens with the other pieces of property? Why can't we do this as one closing?
They would close on the first piece. They would be in default if they don't follow up with the second closing. They would be out of the project. We would retain damages from them. We have the ability to collect up to $250,000 plus the deposits they have down on the property. So there would be financial impact to them for not going forward. But yeah, that's that, and we would retain ownership of the property and could.
Okay, and at the first closing, if this does go through, we receive a check for $4.5 million. Is that correct?
$4,071,000.
Okay. All right. My last question is: you had a project, a synopsis of what the project's about, and it says shared parking. If it's shared parking with the parking garage, why aren't they paying for any of it?
They are contributing a portion of the cost.
How much?
What happened was that when the amphitheater and community center were moved there, that created a parking requirement. They had surface parking provided for the residential and commercial component. They agreed to basically pay that cost, contribute that cost that they were otherwise in their plan going to pay for surface parking. It was the CRA's use of or addition of the amphitheater and community center that created the need for the parking garage at that location. So we are making up that parking that their plan had.
And how much are they paying for the
It
garage?
hasn't been determined yet. That's part of the negotiation in the declaration of covenants that's going to be occurring over the next few months.
Okay. And the amphitheater is going to be how large?
We don't know yet.
Well, there's a lot of unknowns here. What if we wanted a 5,000-seat amphitheater? I mean,
I think the plan allows for about 2,000 people. The way it's laid out, it will accommodate about 2,000 people, which is much more than we've had at any of our events so far.
well, that's because we don't have enough to accommodate.
Pardon me?
We don't have enough to accommodate. If we had something large, maybe we can get a large venue here. But getting back to the community center, we still don't even know how big that is. So we have a lot of unknowns here that we're really going into this.
But this site can accommodate a community center of, I think, anywhere. Can you specify that, Joe? Or I want to say 30 to 40,000 is what we.
Well, it can go up to 50 or 60 too.
Well,
I mean, to say.
Again, we have $6 million for the community.
No, I understand,
center,
but
so
that's where the developer needs to come in and say, you know what, this is what I can do for you guys. You know, so far I haven't seen one thing for the developer saying, you know what, this is what I'm going to do for the city of Margate. You know, this whole contract is tapered toward the developer. It's a sweet deal, and it's not what the people I've talked to want, and we're voting on something we don't know how big certain items are, how big a community center is, who's paying for the parking garage.
Many of the items that we are including, when we issued the RFP, we solicited a developer saying we would pay for many of these public improvements. That was our contribution. Again, we've owned this property for many, many years, and it had not been developed, and it was, you had gone through a couple of solicitations with different development teams. They fell through. We had many, dire economic conditions. And the feeling was these were things that are going to be offered, and this is going to be a partnership, and you're asking a developer to come in. If you were to just put this property on the market and say, highest and best use, take it, that's what we're here to make money, you would probably get a higher price. But we're asking for a partnership. We're asking for what we asked for in the RFP was a particular style of development. Create a town center, put Margate on the map, create a sense of place here, some place that's going to make us stand out in Western Broward County. And it's not as easy. It's much more complicated, and it's harder to, it's not the type of thing where you just sell the property and move on. There's a lot of consequences for the developer, a lot of risk that the developer is taking as well with something like this. So, and we are, since we negotiated, actually, originally we were offering the 36 acres, but the way this is working out, we're retaining at least 2 acres in phase 2 because that property is not even going to change hands. The property where the amphitheater, the canal, the water, the boat launch, the community center, that's all going to stay within the CRA's ownership. So that's really coming out of the what the developer's going to own.
I understand. We're not part of the negotiating. That's not our job. I wish it was, because I would love to negotiate it. But I just think that what's being proposed here, is not what Margate really wants. And this is going to make or break the city, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Anyone else up here? Say anything? No? Public?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
A little slow.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner, Mayor. We've had a lot of times that we've gone over this. We've asked them to come back. They have redefined, projected, done other things, changed plans for us because of the input that we've had. This sense of place is something I've been to 2 FRA conventions. This sense of place is something that people want. It's something when I watch HGTV, and it's something that people ask for. They want to go be close to activities, be able to walk to it. This design, Joe, I was raised in a community which was called the bedroom community of New Jersey, and my Central Avenue had all these features because I could walk to everything that we needed. It was there on Central Avenue, and whatever happened, but it was a thriving community for many years because we had everything that we didn't have to go downtown, we didn't have to do anything else until we wanted to buy cheaper maybe, but everything was there for us in that community. And it did give us a sense of place. We were kids, we could walk up to the avenue. We had nothing better to do, we could walk up to the avenue and go in and out of the stores. So I'm satisfied. They've asked us what we wanted, not just us, the community. We had all this input. We're now a year down the pike since we came to this agreement, to what we wanted to see, and I just want to see us go forward. It's important for us as a city. It's everybody's not going to like what we're doing, and that's okay. But I feel that we have, not because of what anything you guys have said, but looking at the plans and reviewing everything, the different seminars that I've gone through and different planning. This is something that we need to happen. I recall living in this and working in the city of Newark, where we had, everybody in Newark was going down, people were going to leave, yada yada, and all of a sudden we had ideas. We had this big idea for a city center. No, it wasn't the city center. It was the Prudential Center. We thought, what? That's never going to happen downtown. Then we had the idea for a performing arts center down by the riverfront. No, it's never going to happen. Well, when I left New Jersey almost 18 years ago, I actually went to 2 performances of the Performing Arts Center, and it's a big hit, and it's gone even further, even more growth in it now. And the Prudential Center, well, we all know that the Prudential, well, maybe you all don't know, but the Prudential Center is there, and it's thriving. So these plans it took 10, 15, 20, sometimes more years for things that people had thought about would never happen, and they happen. But one thing my dad always said, you stick to it. This is what you're going to go about. Let's stick to it. It's not going to happen overnight, but let's back it up and move forward. Everybody is not going to like it, but that's the way it is. We just have to make the best of it that we can. And for me, for right now, I'm happy that we have at least evolved, I'll say, to this point. And I'm just appreciative of it, for listening to us and coming back multiple times with ideas that we've had. Thank you.
Anyone else up here? Do you want to say something?
This has been a long time in coming, and I have confidence in these developers. I think they are going to do right by us. I envision this as not being full of big box stores, because big box stores, as you know, are going out every single day. Just look at Sports Authority. Look at Radio Shack. Although nobody wants to go to big box stores anymore. They want to shop online. What this is going to do for Margate is bring in those small specialty shops where we get a small deli, where we can go, we can walk in our new downtown, get a sandwich, sit outside, talk, meet our neighbors. A fruit and nut kind of cafe, a sweet shop, an ice cream shop. That's what we don't have in Margate, and nobody around here has that. And this is what this is going to bring for us in Margate, not only for the people that live in the area, but for us as residents to want us to give us a place so we don't have to go to Coral Springs. We don't have to go to the Walk. We don't have to go to the Promenade. We've got our own niche right here in Margate. And I am looking forward to this. I think it will be a plus for Margate, and it will put Margate on the map. I think our residents will like this. They will want to come. I spoke to the developers. The amphitheater and the community center are going to be a big piece of this project. That's what's going to drive people to our downtown. It's not going to be an amphitheater where we have one show on a weekend. They want something continuously going on in our amphitheater. They want something continuously going on in our community center. So this downtown will be vital. There's going to be people here all the time. People are going to go to the community center. They're going to go to the exercise room. They get out of the exercise room. You know what? It's around lunchtime. Let's go to this little cafe and let's grab a bite to eat. Let's go to this little ice cream shop. Let's grab an ice cream cone and sit and talk. That's what this downtown is going to do for Margate, and I am all for it. And I think we are going to do it right, and it is going to be a big part of the future of Margate.
I just want to chime in a couple things. For all of you out there, if you want to get a real sense of idea in place, there's a website out there. There's a group called Project for Public Spaces. I'm sure most of you guys are all aware of that. Out there in the audience, go to that website. This is exactly what's going on all over our country. In New York, they're taking, in Brooklyn, they're taking these old cargo containers and making them into buildings, and people are living in them, people are shopping in them. All kinds of different things are happening, but the thing is to get people together from the community. You know, I've sat up here for a long time. We've gone through this ad nauseum, okay? There's thousands of developers out there, thousands in this country. And how many came at our last one, Diane? 4 put in proposals? Right?
4 responses.
4 responses out of thousands in this country. Got it down to 2. They're not banging on our door to come here, okay? You know, we've got a chance to do something and move forward. Otherwise, we can look at this for the next 10 years. I don't want to look at it any more than anyone else does. One of my sons lives in a place called Travelers Rest. It's in South Carolina. I saw their amphitheater. I think I gave some pictures to you folks. They have concerts there all the time. It's gorgeous. It's small. Maybe theirs fits maybe 500 or 1,000. And most of these, they don't even charge. These are free concerts for the citizens of their community. They're fantastic. They have flea markets here. They have a marketplace there. People bring in things. It's a great thing on the weekends. It's 10 times better than the swap shop was, where they just used to sell junk, and you'd go over there and that was that. This is a lot different kind of a thing. As far as our amphitheater and our community center goes, you know, I was talking when they were talking about the dog park the other day. We had a workshop. I said, why don't we get somebody to name the dog park? You know, like Purina or something, put their name on it. We can do the same with our waterfront development. You know, you get like, was it Ron John Sports? Maybe they want to put their name on a sign there, or they want to call it the I don't know who's into fitness. I don't know what's that, Under Armour. They want to sponsor our community center, and they can pay for it. I mean, these are just different things we can do. But again, this has been going on for a long time. I'm tired of looking at this property, empty property, and so are the citizens of our city. And we deserve these things. And I don't know, you know, if you don't want it, I can understand. Some of you don't want it. fine. I mean, you want to go to Coral Springs and spend your money? Go ahead. We can spend our money here. I'd rather spend it down here in Margate and offer something to our citizens. And again, it's not just where our citizens are going to support this. If I said before, if we had to rely on just our citizens to support this, it'll go broke. Just like Coral Springs. Say, oh, the restaurants there, Coral Springs. Well, if only Coral Springs residents went to those restaurants, they'd go broke. They would go broke tomorrow. They depend on much more than the residents of Coral Springs. So it's for everybody, and it's a great idea. I think we need to move forward. It's going to be nice. I've seen places like this in other parts of the country. It does work. It really does. And I think we have something we can be proud of, and we need to move forward with this. And I'll open up for public discussion.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Rebecca from the Margate Chamber of Commerce, Executive Director. I just wanted to make a statement that the Margate Chamber of Commerce is very much behind this project. Based on my discussions, by and large, with the business community, I think that people are pretty excited about the idea of an expanded customer base as far as being from commercial and from residential. From what I've heard from everyone, we really need something in downtown Margate, and I think that this is going to be really great for our city. And I work very closely with the CRA, and I put a lot of trust in their decision-making process and the level of thought and consideration that they've really put into this project. And that's where we stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Anthony Caggiano. I have a lot to say, so I'm going to make it quick. The gentleman over here talking about St. Augustine, Savannah, they are beautiful cities. I was just in Richmond, Savannah, and St. Augustine recently. But the thing is this. Growing up, when we were making a trip to Florida, we always said, let's go to Savannah. Let's get some pecan pie. Let's go to St. Augustine. It's the oldest city in the country. Let's go to Richmond. No one wakes up in New York or New Jersey or anywhere and says, let's go to Margate. They have what they have that we don't have, and what made those cities revitalize. I was just there, and I asked a lady who had a soap store. The lady makes a living selling soap. They have an amazing waterfront. They've welcomed colleges into the city so that they have new money coming in from these colleges, all these students coming in and spending money. This project doesn't have that. As people living in a community, going to work and coming in, who is going to be supporting these businesses? All right? And they also have they have apartments over the businesses. Again, having people walking in, just like I grew up in Queens. You're not going to have that in this project. All right? St. Augustine. Look, it comes down to this. The CRA is on the verge of making, in my opinion, a horrible decision that's going to affect the city for multiple generations. Instead of building a thriving downtown, we're planning on building up to 1,000 units of housing. Who's going to live in them? There's no pressing demand for apartments in our city. When was the last time someone told you they couldn't find a place to live in Margate? And at only 1 car per unit. Can this city deal with an extra 1,000 cars a day at rush hour on 441 going in and going out? It's going to be a parking lot. Now, I understand the CRA and RMA want to be seen doing something. But in this case, doing nothing makes far more sense than doing something until we can figure out what is the exact right thing to do. And whose crazy idea is it to sell prime Margate property that we paid over $30 million for $10 million? This is the taxpayers' property, and the taxpayers should benefit from the development and not just the developers. What we do in Margate, what we do Margate citizens get out of it, what do we get other than this traffic jams out of this? We are better off putting a for sale sign on the property and getting the best bid, because remember, we're going to get $10 million for what we paid $30 million for. We're going to build a parking garage at about $20,000 a parking spot. We build a parking garage for what, 200 spots? That's $4 million already out of the $10 million that we've taken in. We're netting near nothing for a $30 million investment. I just think that this is a big mistake. And the millenniums I know, they like shopping on the internet. And the thought of them walking from where I live in Margate to the city downtown is a pipe dream.
Please, don't
Thank
speak
you.
from the audience. Sorry.
I just have a couple questions. The from what the breakdown says is that phase one of the project is everything on the east side of town. Okay, that's what your paperwork says. In phase one, according to the map, it includes the community center and the amphitheater. But yet I was just heard that the community center and amphitheater are part of phase three. Which one are they part of? Phase one or phase three? Is this map wrong? What was said wrong? Which part of they from?
Phase one.
They're part of phase one, the amphitheater.
All the public facilities are on phase one.
Okay, that's what this is. Okay, that's not what was said before. We're having 3 separate closings. The first closing is going to be for 4,000, 065, 71. The numbers are a little bit different here. How much of the 36.4 acres are we selling in the first part? You have a closing. I'm a realtor, okay? When I close a property, we close a property, we have surveys and what we're selling, okay? Are we selling just the east side?
Yes.
441
Don't touch.
to them?
Yes.
Doesn't go away.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we're selling the east side of 441 to them. Just a real quick thought on that side of 441. You see where the amphitheater is? Right on the other side of that canal is a senior community for, what do they call it, assisted living facility. I hope we're not going to have like musical and bands, because those people aren't going to like it too much at night, right across the way there. So I think the amphitheater, although, I mean, I understand you got to put it where you got to put it, probably is not in a good place for us to have the events that we're looking to have right there, right across the canal from a retirement community, because we're going to get nothing but complaints from that people over there. The other thing I did understand was we're getting 968 residential units on the east side of town, or is that in the whole thing? That's the whole thing. Okay. How many of the residential units are we going to have on the east side of town? On the east side of 441, I'm going to call it the east side of town, okay? How many of those are residential units? It really doesn't say here in the map what it is. It's got a little brown. 400 residential units on the east side of State Road 7. And how many are we having on the west side? Let's go take phase.
Wrap it up, Frank.
3. Yeah, okay. Okay, well, the point I'm trying to make is we have a whole bunch of residential units on the east side of town, which is probably not the best place for them. They should be on the west side, where people can come in from the back of the streets in order to get to their properties. The last question, why do we have a 120-day inspection period? I sell houses. I don't even have a 30-day inspection period, and they do all kinds of inspections. What do we need a 120 inspection day period once you sign the contract, and then 120 days to then process the paperwork? What are you doing? What kind of inspections are they doing in the 120 days? They're doing termite and... You haven't done those yet?
We don't have an agreement.
Okay, Frank. Thank you,
Okay,
Frank.
thank you.
Anyone else?
As I've been going around in the last month, couple months, talking to different residents, being at the Sounds of Sundowns, the feeling that I'm getting from all of the residents is they want this. They want this desperately. But the big thing is they don't want the residential, the 400 units on the east side. Now, the thing that I'm thinking is we have an election coming up in November. Why don't we put this out on the ballot? Let's see what the residents want. Right now, I'm looking in this room, we've got less than 0.25% of the residents of Margate. Let's see what they want. Let's have their voices heard. That's all I got to say.
Well, it's probably too late to put on the ballot right now. So, we'd have to wait another year. But I think the voters already approved our CRA years ago.
Good evening. Arlene Schwartz, former mayor and city commissioner, and I mention that because I did sit on this city commission in 2003-04 when we held our original charrettes, and what we asked people was, where do you see the center of Margate? And of course, they said Margate Boulevard 441. We asked them what they would like to see there, but we never asked them if they'd like to see, regardless of east or west side of 441, it's 441. We never asked them if they wanted 968 residential units with a possibility of 1,500 cars coming out onto a state road, which in all due respect, we cannot change the speed limit on without the state approval, and I seriously doubt ever seeing it because most people think 35 miles an hour is too slow when it takes as long as it does now to get across Margate. I rarely come up here with notes, and I have a million of them here, but I will try and do this within the 3 minutes. No one ever asked the residents if they wanted to take a $30 million investment and turn it into a $10 million investment, which is a $20 million loss. No one says we have to sell this property. We are not in dire straits. The CRA from the last meeting has quite a healthy budget. The city has a healthy budget. No one is saying sell Margate because we need to get all of our property sold and developed. I think an amphitheater, I think shopping and venues like that is a great thing for there. But this is overwhelmingly residential. You have more than 500 units on the market in Celebration. You have 274 in Toscana. They're not full. And I doubt seriously that they all will be full. And while I've heard that we can't use any of the TIF money for fire, you have to consider the fact that there will be residential calls in an area which will still be part of the CRA. Fire department, police department will be under-equipped and undermanned. And truthfully, it probably should have been a ballot question, which you can no longer do for this year, that says to the citizens of Margate, do you approve selling $30 million for 10 for the benefit of developers who will make hundreds of millions of dollars? I would suggest that you hold off on doing this or only do that part that really would benefit the recreational part of the city, because otherwise you're going to one day say we have to build an overpass over State Road 7 to get the people from the west across to the east, which will certainly make this the ugliest city in Broward County. Because you can do this doesn't mean you need to. Thank you.
Anyone else?
A lot of the things have already been said. I wholeheartedly agree with. I think that Tommy's exactly right as far as the what you're about to do is take $30 million worth of property and sell it for $10 million. I think that's a shame when it comes to the taxpayers. But I think what's going to end up happening is what Mitch alluded to in the first meeting that you had, that he's been waiting for however many years, 22 years, in order to see something happen. And I think what's going to happen here tonight is that you're going to do something for the sake of doing something. And I don't think you're going to do it for the sake of doing what's best for the city of Margate. I think what the first intention of developing the downtown, if I understand correctly, was to make it a destination. It was not to make it into another residential area. And this is what you're doing. You're making it into another residential area. I listened to a meeting where Commissioner Peerman talked about the millennials and about the fact that they would like to stay in one place and they want to shop. And I agree with all that stuff that you're talking about. But we're fooling ourselves if we think that these millennials are going to, or whoever lives in that place, is going to stay right in that place. There is going to be a lot of traffic added to very congested roads. We had a meeting one night on planning and zoning where we saw traffic studies. The amount of traffic on Royal Palm Boulevard over the next 8 to 10 years is going to be massive. We're going to be adding a huge amount of traffic, and we're not taking that into consideration, both on Royal Palm and on Atlantic. We're talking about, yes, with fire and police, response times being considerably slowed down, but what happened to that part? What happened to that goal on your first slide where it said we wanted shopping, dining, entertainment with supporting residential? This is not supporting residential. This is pretty much strictly residential. Your commercial portion of this plan is out of whack when it comes to this whole project. You need to have a larger portion of commercial, less residential. You're going to have a problem with that traffic and having people go from the west side to the east side. And with all respect to this young man right here, slowing the traffic, slowing the speed down so I have a greater chance of survival if I get hit by a car is not the answer. What you have to do is provide some sort of a safe way to get from the west side to the east side, and you're not doing that. I think that when you showed your employment numbers, 372 more people employed, but those numbers are skewed. How many people are already employed in the commercial part that you're going to eliminate? You're not going to add that many jobs. I do agree with the fact that we do have to have, it would be nice to have those unique shops. It would be nice to have a place to go to. But if what you're trying to do is take this in a small way and make it a destination and bring that congestion from other places in there, you're going to have a magnified problem. The parking garage is not going to solve it. You are opening yourselves up for, I think, some incredible problems, traffic-wise, everything-wise, not making it the destination that you wanted to make it. I think what happens is that these guys come in, they're going to do fantastic. Off of their investment, they're going to make who knows how many millions of dollars off of this project. And when they're done, they leave us with a massive problem. I don't think this is what you want, but I think this is what you're going to do, and it's a shame. So anyways, my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm not going to reiterate what everybody else has already said, because those are basically some talking points. But the community center, how many square footage is that going to be? Any idea?
30 to 50,000 square.
How many?
30 to 50,000, I think. Was that what it was?
We're having a study done now. We're going through a process now where we have a consultant that specializes in recreational facilities, and we're going through a process of determining how it wants. First, we're trying to decide what uses are going to be there. Then we'll know better what the square footage has to be.
Well, I can tell you, when you have a community center, it's never going to be big enough, because once you start something and all of a sudden people start coming there, you're going to wish you had a bigger community center. Also, you're going to have to allow for plenty of parking for the community center. Now, the amphitheater, the mayor was talking 5,000 square feet. 5,000 seats. That's about right. That's what you should have, not 2,000, because you're going to have people coming to that area. You're going to have more seats than people you think are going to plan, because eventually people will come to that if you have the seats. If they find out it's too small, like you go to the Pompano Amphitheater, been there many times. A lot of times, if they got a big venue, I won't go, because I know I'm not going to find a place to park, and I'm not going to find a place to sit, because I'm going to be sitting crowded with people, because there's not enough seats. You mentioned about the walk. Ms. Simone, have you ever owned a business? Have you?
Yes.
She's owned a business?
Who?
Okay, you haven't owned a business. Okay. Well, if you had to mention a walk, I don't know how many times you've been there, but there's a lot of restaurants that go in and out of business there, because even though the customers not only come from Coral Springs, Parkland, Margate, North Lauderdale, and everything around Tamarack, they still go out of business because there's too many restaurants. And you talk about specialty shops don't cut it. Because if you go in there once, oh, this is nice, chocolate, coffee or something like that, you're not going to go back. You go back once in a while, you're not going to go back there every day. And also, what are the rents and the taxes are going to be for these people in these shops? And also, the number of talked about the apartments. You only have one car per unit. You're not going to end up with a lot of takers for those apartments because what's going to happen is they have 2 cars. So I got friends that went shopping for apartments because they sold their house and their other deal couldn't fall through. They went to rent a place, and they couldn't rent a place because they have 2 cars. There's only one spot per unit. So they had to go somewhere else. They went out of the area. Also, with the apartments on here, you got the big, where the old cow pasture is, right by the old Blockbuster. All those units going in there. The old mobile home park, just next to the, across from the other old mobile home park, they're putting in hundreds upon hundreds of units there. So I don't know why we need to have all these extra units when you're going to have so many units available, plus all the extra traffic. How come this wasn't shown to the people? This is just first-time presentation?
No, it's not.
Well, this is the first time I've seen it. The first time I heard about it was when I went to the last meeting. I haven't seen it in the paper or anything. I get the Sun Sentinel. I don't get the form every week because it doesn't show up on my door every week. But you mentioned the millennials. First off, a lot of them don't have cars because one thing they don't have cars is because they don't have jobs, and they don't have jobs because they don't have money.
Thank you.
So this is another bad idea. And I think if I was to get some people together, you think you'd sell it to me for $12 million instead of 10? And I could just keep it empty?
No.
I can make some calls. I can probably get a bunch of investors
Your
together.
time's up. Thank you.
But I think it's just a bad idea. And the economy is not good right now. It's still not good because you haven't got enough. Why you haven't got any bids? Because the economy's still bad.
All right. Some more people want to speak. I'm sorry.
I think a lot of us is for having the downtown area, the shopping, the dining, the restaurants, the entertainment. We all want that. There's no doubt that anybody's trying to put a stop to this project, trying to make it stop. What a lot of people are saying, they just want to see compromising by taking away the apartments from the east side so that we have a larger area of shopping, dining, restaurants, entertainment on the east side so that we have a big downtown area so that other cities will actually want to come to us. They're not going to want to come to us to come see our extra apartments that we have in Margate. They're not saying, wow, let's go to Margate because they just built a lot more apartments. Let's go see all those apartments down there. That's not what they're going to come to Margate for. They're going to want to come to Margate because we're building something spectacular that'll blow away the promenade or something. If you had all what you need to have on the east side and not apartments. If you compromised and just let the apartments go to the west side, I think you would have the majority of the support of the Margate residents because you'd be able to provide something for the city of the Margate residents that would be something spectacular rather than who's going to want to come down there to see apartments. Are the other cities really going to say, I really want to come down there to see those new apartments? We've got plenty of other new apartments going on in Margate. They can go on the west side. It's all about compromising.
Amanda, we tried this twice already. The developers got up and walked away from us. They
You're
did.
settling.
Okay.
You're settling for something quick.
I'm sorry, but that's how it's got to work. No one will do it without that. Sorry to say. Yeah, I'd like to have no apartment. But Lee, you're up. Hold on a second.
I don't disagree with you on certain things. But here's the problem. And I asked about it. They can't go out and get a Longhorn Steakhouse. They can't go out and get an ice cream parlor. They can't do any of that stuff because they don't have a contract. They know they're underestimating how successful this is going to be. They know they're going to have to make changes and add more commercial on that side of the property. But they can't sit here and tell us, we're going to bring you X, Y, and Z, because they don't have the property. They can't go talk to anybody about, oh, well, we may have a property, but then we have to go back to the CRA, and they're going to decide if they're going to sell it to us or not. Until we have a developer's agreement with them, they can't tell us exactly what they're going to do. They know they've underestimated. They've underestimated for a reason. They don't have control of what they can put there. Until we sign this agreement, they won't ever be able to. We can do this next week, the next week, the next week. Until we sign an agreement with a developer, no business, restaurant, ice cream parlor, anything, hotel, which I hope it's pet friendly, hotel, anything is going to say, yes, we're going to come. Because they're just developers that are talking about a pipe dream that don't have an agreement with the people that own the property. That's why we have to sign the agreement. It is certainly not settling. It's certainly not, just came up with this at the last minute. We've been doing this a long time, to the point where we had a developer come in and drop an apartment building over on the south or the north east side of the properties. That's all they did. They dropped an apartment building. They gave us beautiful pictures. And they said, oh yeah, we'll build something around here for you all. These people understand. They get it. They get it because they've come and talked to us. They get it because they've been out here presenting. They get it because they've gotten beaten up numerous times. They get it. But until we sign a piece of paper with them, they can't get it. They can't get anything to come to the city of Margate. That's just facts.
Mr. Ruzzano?
Lee, I agree with you that it's very hard. Their hands are tied to get a business here. But if they would have come back and stated maybe in their contract that they were only going to put commercial green space on the east side, I would have no problem with this contract. The problem is there's an overabundance of housing on the east side, and the majority of the people aren't looking at that as a downtown area. And I knew that, I said that from the beginning. I think a couple of commissioners here were close to that. I remember there was talking of a marketplace and stuff like that, and these are all things that the city could have been involved. Even if you guys wanted to purchase everything but the east side, we can develop our community center, we could develop our amphitheater, our marketplace. I think it would be a lot better than what's being proposed tonight. And I think the residents would have no problem with that. It's just the way it was proposed with 1,000 units, and we basically have our hands tied. And a lot of people feel that we're in way too deep right now, and we have no way out. But there is a way out, and I wish we could negotiate. And you could say, you know what, we'll open it up for more space on the east side. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard you say that this was developed in such a way that if you needed to add more commercial, it could be easily done. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the benefits of designing the small blocks, okay, into the plan. It allows us to add commercial all over the place, actually. And I think, too, again, what Mayor Ruzzano is asking is it's interesting, because if you think about every new downtown that's being built or redeveloped.
Please, Mr. Palacio.
Sorry, I have gas.
Yeah, we know.
Throughout the United States, you will see that there's one thing consistent in all the redevelopment plans, and that is the introduction of more residential into those downtowns. And it's not being done in a segregated way. It's being done in what they call as fine-grained a manner as possible. In other words, getting the residential intermingled as much as possible with the commercial. Look, I'm going to make a statement here, a prediction. You know, assuming that we do go forward with this, over the next, 5 years, I'll be back here constantly on a regular basis. We've had this conversation with the staff, amending and tweaking. If we're successful in rolling out the initial stages of commercial and getting good users, then there'll be more demand for it. And then we'll be able to come back and help, hopefully fulfill, some of what, Commissioner Ruzzano is requesting. And I think we all would like to see as much commercial as we can possibly get in there. But just remember, it's not as easy as it sounds, because what you end up with a lot of times when you look at the commercial, there's certain users that are going to say, I don't want to be part of this, because they're used to being in a strip mall, okay? And if we say, well, there's some opportunities for that, but there's other opportunities that are going to be into the mixed use area where there might be residential or office on top of you. Some are just going to say flat out, I don't want to be here. And if you say yes to everybody who wants that, then you're going to just be like everybody else. And we don't want to be like everybody else. We don't. That will be the key to success. When everybody else, if we do this, that's what they said about Delray. Okay? Oh, Delray, you should change. You should change your downtown. You should make it, more like all those suburban areas. And guess what? They stuck with it through bad times. And at the end of the day, it became one of the most desirable places in South Florida to go to because they created that small town charm. There is many examples of that. South Miami, Coral Gables. They have elements of what we're trying to create here. We're not saying we're going to replicate Delray, or we're going to replicate Coral Gables, or we're going to replicate South Miami.
3 minutes?
Excuse me, Mitch, please. You want to leave? Don't disrupt the meeting like this. It's distasteful. I'm sorry. Why don't you just leave, okay? You do this time and time again here.
That's okay if he wants to
You
talk.
don't have to go up there and do that. I don't think anybody wants to hear you if you're going to act like that. Yes, do you want to leave?
Does Tim have 3 minutes?
I'm sorry.
I don't want to take any more
And
time
You don't
than
have
I'm
any
entitled
time.
to.
No. You can stay up there, and you can leave, Mr. Palacia.
I'm not going to.
No, the police,
Unless you commit police to kick me
they
out.
will kick you out because you're acting way inappropriate. Okay? You interrupted the guy when he was doing it. Go ahead.
Let's go. It was his turn to talk. You guys
Excuse me. It was his turn to talk, but someone asked him a question. And you can go too if you want to start interrupting from back there. Okay?
Let's go.
Let him talk.
Show some civility. Let who talk?
No. Okay.
No.
And then we're going to take you out of here.
This is ridiculous.
Please get up and come with us.
Make sure that I have all this on tape.
All right. Mitch, they're going to let you talk. Mitch, no, don't remove him.
You're going to
They want him to talk.
They're going to physically remove me?
If you keep this up, they want you to talk. They want the rest of the commissioners. Excuse me, Mitch. Do you want to talk or not talk? Do you want to talk or not? Yes or no?
Giving you the opportunity to
Yes or
talk.
no?
Thank you.
Then get up and
They
talk.
want you to talk.
I appreciate that, and thank you very much. And that was violently offensive, by the way.
And don't, let's not start. We're
hold on.
talking about what's on the agenda right now, not
Correct.
because how you were treated. So start talking about that, or you will be asked to leave.
Correct.
Thank you.
What's happening here right now is the same thing that's happened. This item on the agenda has nothing to do with how people feel about the development of downtown Margate. The agenda item is specifically directed toward whether or not you're going to approve this development agreement or not. That is specifically the idea of this agenda item. So to listen to all of this, I'm sorry, to coin it as rhetoric, and it doesn't even matter how anybody feels, the bottom line is that you all, this conversation is about deciding whether or not this agenda item on this Margate Community Redevelopment Agency meeting agenda item is going to be approved or not. It's not about what people, you guys already, you guys and gals, and everybody out here, through several years of debating whether or not what's going to go on in downtown, and forgive me, Mayor, but the bottom line is that it's over. The conversation about what's happening downtown is over. Tonight is whether or not to approve this agreement with your developer. People that disagree with this development process, it's too late. Even for any of you politicians, elected officials, it's too late. It's already agreed. You've gone this far. This is not about, well, how anybody feels about a hotel or how anybody feels about green space or anything like that. This has already been done. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for anybody that feels differently that I do. But the bottom line is that tonight, you either approve the development agreement or you don't. And if you don't, then you go back in your own druthers and you figure out how to work it out. But this item is not about coming to this board again and saying, like, I don't want a park. I don't want a hotel. I agree with a lot of the stuff that people were saying here tonight. But the bottom line is that it's too late for anybody to say anything about that. You all already made your decision. This is a hearing that says, do you want to engage the developer or not? So you people decide, do you want to? And if you want to, you take responsibility for it. And if you don't want to, you take responsibility for it. And Chair Talerico, thank you very much. I was out of line, and I appreciate it. And please don't ever do that to a resident like me with the police again. And oh my God, that's so creepy.
Stop.
Holy cow.
Next.
Thank you.
I live in the Oakland Hills section of Margate. It takes me about 5 minutes to get to work. If I leave at the wrong time, it'll take me 25 to 30 minutes. I travel up 441. And as I see the project here, if we were to cut down the speed limit there, what I'm talking about is 3 lanes going north. All 3 lanes are filled up, and this is without lowering the speed limit. So that's going to present a problem. Also, what is the exact amount that we paid for the property? I heard it was around 37 million. Is that accurate? Okay. And then we're going to sell it for 10 million. That doesn't quite sound right to me. I would like to have us reconsider that. Also, some of the things I've looked at, and it's probably a rhetorical question when we look at the projection on how many jobs it's going to provide, how much revenue is going to be coming into the city. Is that a conservative estimate, or is it a wishful thinking estimate? Yes, because the things that I've seen in other projects, most of them don't hit those projections. And not all of them, some of them do. And so I'd like for all of you to reconsider before you make a final judgment on this. Can we do a better job of negotiating on a price? 10 million compared to 37 million. That seems a little out of line to me. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Bryan?
I just want to make the public aware that we have a CRA executive director over here. We got this lady. We made this decision. We were very happy to get someone of her caliber. When Mr. Hernandez mentioned Del Rey, I don't know if any of you know that she came from Del Rey. We all know the success story that Del Rey has. Why did she come to Margate? That was a question I think all of us asked her in her interview, because she saw an opportunity to make a difference, to come to a community that had something that we could do differently. So I just want the community out here to remind them of this if they do not know this fact. So we have to rely on expertise. She's already almost a year now, she's been the president of the FRA. And you just don't get, redevelopment agency, you just don't get to be the president unless you have some knowledge and your background and people are happy with what you do. And I've said it before and I'll say it again and again. whenever you talk to people about Diane Colonna, like, wow, amazing, excellent, knows her stuff. You have to rely on expertise of other people. And this lady has been behind this plan. She's tweaked it, done things. We've talked to her. We've planned with her. So,
Black Lives Matter,
this is...
Nice mouth.
What the heck?
Consider the source, Joyce.
Never mind. So anyway, I'm just saying that. So if you have not been here and do not know more about her, I want you to know about that's the kind of person that we are dealing with that represents us. Okay? Thank you.
Before you start, Joyce, Diane, I think we had a conversation a while back. Other cities have gone through situations like where they bought this land and they sold it they sold it at a loss because that's how they develop their properties?
CRAs often sell property at a discount or a loss, and typically what you find, a CRA is buying property that has blighted structures or already has buildings on it, so you're paying for buildings, and then typically you're tearing the buildings down and selling the land vacant, or you're selling it to be used, to be redeveloped, so the buildings have no value, and it's not unusual for CRAs to take a loss. It is allowed by the statute. That is, you'd rather not, it'd be great not to be, but again, it's a situation where you are asking a developer or a private person to help you implement your vision of what you want on that property, what you want your city to be, and it's a lot different than just selling it to someone for the highest and best use. I mean, probably an auto dealer would be interested in the piece on the east side, and that's not what we want here.
I think a prison was interested. They'll
So
pay us $80 million.
Yeah, and it was 32.2 million that was paid. So.
Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like I'm wasting my time here, but because you've already made your decision. But there's a couple of things I want to ask. I know there's an election coming up. If you guys vote this through, which most likely is going to happen, and we have new commissioners that vote against it, will this be able to be stopped at a later point?
Under the contract that you're approving tonight is between the CRA and the developer. It has to go through the development approval process. You're looking at site plan, you're looking at other approvals that are required. So that's the other board that would have to consider that. But certainly from the CRA's perspective, the CRA is under the agreement, is bound to cooperate and assist with those approvals.
So we have time, but it takes time to get those plans done. I don't see. It wasn't 98% of City Margate residents are not knowing that this is going on. And you already said it's too late to put it on a ballot. I can guarantee you if we put it on a ballot, which you said there was not enough time, this would get shot down quickly. If we're not in a financial need, why are we taking such a loss? I don't understand that. 441 has unbelievable amount of traffic. The promenade is on Lyons Road. I guarantee you 441 has more traffic and people drive. I bet every one of you have been to the promenade. It looks like it's doing very well. There's no apartments there. There's no apartments there. The builder has done very well. He's gotten everything he needed. Listen, we don't need to take this kind of a loss. Everyone says, well, the economy's this and that. Well, guess what? If you had a 401k, we all lost. But any investor would tell you not to sell. You don't jump out of an airplane without a parachute. Its economy is coming back. And another thing is the tax that you can get from this, you're never going to recoup. In 20 years, you're not going to recoup what you've lost. You can't add the taxes at a percentage annually as the property value is going to come up quicker than you can do annually rates. So I don't understand that. And don't get me wrong, I love to see shopping there. I don't want to see residential there. Another thing is, would the builder accept a kick out of phase one if, per the CRA, if you see that it's going a certain way and he gets these restaurants and everything in, would they accept a kick out so that you guys can control more of what goes in there? What's to stop them from putting more apartments in and say, oh, we couldn't get more commercial in there, so we had to up more apartments in there. The impact on 441 is going to be ungodly. And I'll tell you what, I travel on 441 as well. I understand what that gentleman said before me. It's true. You want to slow the speed down, which I don't think is possible, but if you did, I'm sure that people are going to find other traffic ways to go. So then you're going to make the city of Margate not want to become downtown. We have so much potential here. It's a shame that we're going to allow it to go forth. Thank you.
Ms. Peerman?
This document is a living, breathing document. The developers have told us it's a living, breathing document. We've told them it's a living, breathing document. So what you're looking at is a piece of paper with the first concept of an idea of where they can make money, we can bring commercial into town. And I'm rarely ever going to say this, but I happen to agree with Mitch. This discussion is about signing a contract with the developers. If 98%, which I so don't believe, because I'm out there talking to residents all the time, but if 98% of the residents don't know about this, I don't know where they've been, because we've been talking about this for years and years. We've been talking about this. We've had people come for every developer that has come into town. Tonight we're deciding, are we going with this developer as opposed to the last developer or the other developer that said, no, I won't work with you. Now, they offered us a couple more $1 million for the property, but their answer was, when we asked them, are you willing to work with us? And their answer was, flat out, no, we're not. Remember that we as a CRA are asking an awful lot from these people. We're asking them to build it the way we want it, to make the buildings look the way we want it, to make sure that this, that, and the other is going on. Yes, we can sell it for $40 or $50 million. We will have zero amount of control. The prison will go over there. A church will go over there. Something else will go over there. If you want that big money, we can do that. You won't have a downtown. You won't have a downtown. You have developers that have come in here and again, repeatedly been beaten up for their ideas. And all they want to do is do the best for Margate. That's what we're discussing. Signing an agreement, taking the handcuffs off of their hands so they can go talk to other businesses. They can go talk to other people. They can go talk to banks and say, hey, look, we have a contract. It's signed. If you want to wait till after the election, you may. They may not. They may not. And if they don't, we go through this whole thing all over again. This group has done Margate good. It has said they are flexible. You can go look at stuff they've done as close as Wilton Manors to see that they listen to the cities and they do what the cities are asking them. I am strongly recommending that we sign the contract with this group.
Mr. Ruzzano?
I understand there's a motion on the floor right now, but I would like to make an amendment to the motion that we change the sale price to $30 million.
There's no second, so the motion dies for lack of a second. Anyone else? Call the roll.
Ms. Peerman?
Yes.
Ms. Bryan?
Yes.
Mr. Ruzzano?
There were 5 people running for commission here that were against this project, and I'm going to have to agree with them and say no.
Ms. Simone?
Yes.
Mr. Talerico?
Aye. Motion carried.
Wow, make it political.